Hey guys, welcome back to A Page in the Chapter, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Paige. We are dressed all cozy in a sweater, but we are gonna be talking about summer recommendations. It is absolutely freezing in the UK right now. July is not Julying, summer is not summering. So forgive the attire, the attire and like the fact that I'm drinking a hot drink and all that sort of thing does not really match with the whole summer theme of the video, but I figured this is probably why we need summer book recommendations more than ever, because we need to get that taste of summer from somewhere, and it's definitely not coming from the weather in the UK. So it is time for another ultimate guide. I did my first ultimate guide as autumnal book recommendations, and I will like tag that somewhere for you guys to go and check that out if you want to get ahead on your spooky season TBRs or would like some book recommendations that match the weather we are currently having a little bit more. But if you've seen that video already, then this video is going to follow that same kind of format. I have split the recommendations into different vibes slash subgenres, and we're just going to be talking through an ultimate guide to summer book recommendations. So if you guys like the sound of this video and you would like to see more from me, then do please feel free to hit that big red subscribe button down below. Stay tuned for future videos. I upload every single Wednesday and every single Sunday. Also, do please feel free to check me out on Bookstagram at apaigeinchapter for more recommendations and reviews on what I'm reading in real time. And without further ado, let's get on into the book recommendations. So the first category that I'm going to talk you through is the rom-coms. I feel like this is what I always reach for first when it gets to summer. People ask me for summer recs. If anyone ever asks me like what book should I take on holiday, I'm always dipping straight into my rom-com selection. Now some of these books do have spice, but I have differentiated this from a specific like spicy category. So even though some of these do have spice, I feel like to me there is a difference between something that has the vibe of a rom-com and then something that is just there to like be spicy. To me there's like a vibe difference, but if you want to use them interchangeably, then there is also going to be a category for like spicy books too, so there might be two categories in this video that you can pull recs from if this is what you're after. But this would not be a summer rom-com recommendation section without talking about these two books, and that is The Ballinger Sisters by Tessa Bailey. Now Tessa Bailey books can be really hit or miss for me. I feel like she's either amazing or she writes like the cheesiest, cringiest things known to man, but these are like the creme de la creme of not only Tessa Bailey books but summer rom-coms in general. This is like very much the vibe of like Schitt's Creek kind of sitcom rom-com kind of vibe. We follow our main character Piper, and when her stepfather cuts her off, she is sent to this small little like fishing town to rediscover the true meaning of like love, life, money. Basically, she's turned into a bit of a wild child and her stepfather wants to teach her a lesson. So she's sent to this small town with like normal hardworking people and forced to learn the real value of money and hard work. And then in Hook, Line and Sinker, we follow Piper's sister Hannah as she is kind of working towards her career and also entrenched in this small town life now thanks to her sister. This one is personally my favorite one of the two, but they are both just as good as each other. This is a rich girl's been cut off from her dad, kind of grumpy sunshine, learning the meaning of hard work kind of rom-com, and then this is like friends to lovers. I'm gonna help you get the attention of your crush by like teaching you how to like hold a guy's attention, etc. And yeah, I don't like friends to lovers, but I loved this, and both of these were just excellent and you need them on your summer TBR. These are always the first two books that I recommend to people who want summer rom-coms. Now this has been a more recent read for me, but I am going to include it in this video anyway, and that is One Last Shot by Betty Cayute. Is this like my favorite book ever written? No, but is it an excellent example of a really summery rom-com that I think is gonna either boost your mood if you're stuck here in dreary UK, or just suit the vibe perfectly if you are like on a beach slash pool holiday and want something to read by a body of water. Like this is just so perfect. So this follows our main character Emerson, and she is a supermodel, but she is kind of losing her love for the industry that she is in. But when she finds out that her childhood best friend is the lead photographer on a shoot in Italy, she gets herself onto this shoot as these two have a marriage pact, and the deadline for this marriage pact is coming up, and she wants to try to remind him of their friendship, remind him of the marriage pact, see if she can initiate a spark there between the two of them. And it follows them on these absolutely gorgeous like Italian settings, ice cream trips, hikes, photo shoots in the sea. We follow them at dinners, we follow them in the past too, in flashback scenes of them in high school and how they met and became friends and how sparks were starting to blossom between them then. And then we flash forward and we see them on this like absolutely stunning photo shoot in Italy. And I just think like vibe wise, this is kind of the perfect summery rom-com. It does have trigger warnings that I would recommend people check out. It is not all like sunshine and rainbows, but none of the trigger warnings are on the page. They're all just stuff that characters have dealt with in their past. So the actual on-page book itself is quite light and breezy and very summery, but I would still recommend looking up any warnings for this book just in case. This wouldn't be a summer rom-coms recommendation without an Emily Henry book in it, would it? I am a die-hard Emily Henry fan. I'm not going to hide that from you all. So if you don't like her books, then you may just want to skip this one. But the next book I have in the rom-com section is Funny Story by Emily Henry. This is so rom-com coded, it hurts. We follow our main characters, Daphne and Miles, and they have both been broken up with because their partners decided to get together. Their partners were childhood best friends, and they had this like childhood best friends to lovers romance arc, leaving Daphne and Miles completely heartbroken and discarded on the side. And Daphne had moved to this small town to be with her ex-fiance and finds herself having nowhere else to live except with Miles. And we follow Miles and Daphne as they kind of band together and find a friendship where you wouldn't imagine a friendship would ever be. They don't really have anyone else. They're the only people in this small town who can possibly understand what each other is going through, and we follow them band together to kind of find some hopefulness in the world again. And we follow Miles as he shows Daphne around and shows Daphne all of the joy there is to be had in this small town, so that she doesn't feel like she has to leave just because her and her ex have broken up. Such a rom-com cutesy story. It definitely has some of those like coming of age, finding yourself moments that a lot of rom-coms tend to have, but this is just perfect. One of my all-time favorites. There are some seriously laugh out loud moments in here, and yeah, I feel like even if you don't like Emily Henry books, you might still like this one because it's just very light. I really enjoyed this. If you can't tell by how much I'm rambling on about it, but you will not find anything more kind of like early 2000s movie rom-com vibe than this book. And then the final rom-com that I have to share with you is another one of my all-time favorites, and I have talked about this one before, but I'm gonna bring it up again in case you are new around here, or I haven't really heard people talk about this book very often in quite a while. It did have its moment in the sun, but that's past now, so maybe this recommendation will be new to some of you, and that is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. Again, this is a duo that I am not a huge fan of generally, but this book is one of my favorites of all time in terms of rom-coms. One of the few books that got me out of the great slump of 2021. It is so light and funny, and I just love it so much. So in The Unhoneymooners, we have an enemies to lovers story where we follow our main character, and she is the maid of honor at her sister's wedding, and then our male love interest is the best man, and everybody at the wedding gets food poisoning from the food, but the maid of honor and best man, or I think that's their roles in the wedding, but I could be wrong, they're the only two that didn't eat the food, so they don't get food poisoning. And the bride won her honeymoon in a competition, and it's absolutely non-transferable. So our main characters have to go on the honeymoon and pretend to be on a honeymoon and recently married so that nobody loses out on this holiday. And they're forced to share like the honeymoon suite and interact in public settings as if they're recently married, even though they hate each other. There are some seriously like laugh out loud moments in here, and it feels very reminiscent of Just Go With It to me. So if you enjoyed that movie, then you'll probably enjoy this book. It just feels so like light and easy breezy. I am 100% due for a reread of this and I kind of wish that I was like on a beach somewhere like reading this, because I think it would just be the perfect vibe. The next category that I have to share with you are the cozy summer reads. These are like kind of the same kind of vibe as when you reach for like a cozy book in autumn, but these have a slightly more summery atmosphere to them, so you don't necessarily feel like you're dipping into like the Halloween romances or anything like that just yet. And this was probably the hardest category to find books for, but I do reach for these kind of books every summer, and I do have a couple to share with you today. So the first one that I have to share is The Honey Witch by Sydney J. Shields. This is a fantasy novel about our main character Marigold, and she decides to go and live with her grandmother to become the next Honey Witch. She is growing up in kind of like a Regency time period, and like she detests the idea of like marriage and the institution of marriage and not being able to be like a woman in her own right with her own power in this society. She very much reminds me of Eloise Bridgerton, but like TV show Eloise Bridgerton and not book Eloise Bridgerton. So she decides to give all of this up and go with her grandma to learn how to be the next Honey Witch. And in being the Honey Witch, she helps care for the environment. She lives in this cute little cottage and has the power to really nurture the nature surrounding her, but the price for this is that nobody will ever be able to fall in love with her, and she is giving up on the idea of love altogether by becoming the Honey Witch. And then we follow the kind of relationship develop between Marigold and this woman named Lottie, as Lottie is notoriously skeptical and does not believe in magic at all, and we follow these two interacting. The atmosphere and vibes of this are so perfect. It feels so cottagecore. Like when I picture this book, I just picture like a little cottage and a field of like lavender. So if you want like a cozy fantasy that still very much feels like summery and is something you could read like sat outside, it feels very English countryside to me, and I think it's the perfect recommendation for those moods where the sun is shining but you still want to feel really cozy and wholesome. This is the most perfect book recommendation I could ever give you for this mood that you might be in. The next kind of cozy, I guess, summery book would also fit into like autumn recommendations. This one, it has a real duality to it, which will make sense when I kind of really get into what this book is about. And that book is Gallant by V.E. Schwab. This is such a short little read that you would be able to like power through in one sitting probably. So this book follows our main character as she is exploring this house called Gallant. I feel like Gallant is a character in and of itself, this kind of old manor house, and this house is very much hiding secrets. There is such a duality to this book in that the daytime scenes in this book feel so much like spring and summer. Again, they feel a little bit like The Honey Witch to me, in that when I picture these books, I picture a garden filled with wildflowers and like a brick wall surrounding this garden and just wandering through all these overgrown wildflowers with the sun streaming down. That's what the daytime scenes of this book feel like. But then the nighttime scenes feel very autumnal and kind of Halloween, and there's this real duality in showing this real life versus death like theme throughout this book, and it very much fits into the actual story that's being told here. So you could very much use this as a summer read, you could use it as an autumn read. I actually read this in the summer. I used this as a spring/summer read, so maybe that's why I was more inclined to put this on this list. One of like the next categories that I have coming up is the summerween category, so you could definitely use this for that if you're not a fan of horror. I absolutely loved following Olivia as she explored this house of Gallant and explored interacting with new family members. It also felt a little bit like Belladonna to me. This one could maybe fit more on an autumn recommendations list, but there are definitely elements here that feel very summery and cozy and definitely getting you started and definitely like wetting the palette before we move into the autumn reads maybe. And then the final book in the kind of cozy but summery category is Circe by Madeline Miller. This is very much a character study of the character of Circe in Greek mythology. This is a Greek mythology retelling, and we follow Circe as she is living on her island and is receiving many visitors that are stopping off on her island, all of the trouble she gets up to, all of the feelings she feels as a result of things that are happening to her, how unfair her role as a woman in mythology has been, her interactions with the gods, things like that. It's a very interesting story. Again, it's another one that I am just due for a reread of, but it has a real kind of summer vibe to it. It's set on like an island in the Mediterranean. It has all this like Greek mythology backstory. We follow Cersei as she is kind of learning to work the land that surrounds her, and it really does have like summery vibes. Again, this one deals with some darker topics, but overall it still has quite a summer cozy vibe to it, and it's definitely one that I would recommend picking up for like those summer days where you want to get lost in another world but you still want to feel like the sun's rays on your face. That's what this book feels like. And then we have the summerween category. So summerween is a term coined from a TV show where this town loves Halloween so much that they celebrate it in the summer as well. It's called Summerween. I do believe there is an actual Summerween readathon that happens in the summer, and I think it's based on horror books, but I don't read horror books, so I am not the person to get like true Summerween like horror recommendations from. If like me you'd like to experience Summerween and interpret it in more of a cozy early Halloween vibe book, then these recommendations are going to be for you, because these are kind of like Halloween vibe books. You could definitely read these for Halloween, but maybe these are the recommendations that you could read in the summer because they'd be a little bit more transferable. So my first recommendations for this obviously has to be one of my favorite books of the entire year, and that is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This is a vampire and werewolf marriage of convenience story, and we follow our main character Misery as her father is like the king of the vampires, and he marries her off in an arranged marriage to their mortal enemies, the werewolves. And it is about Misery and her new husband kind of learning that there are a lot of misconceptions about each other's species and working together to kind of get to the bottom of a mystery and actually growing feelings for each other in the space of that. If you would want a book that kind of feels like an old AO3 / like Wattpad werewolf romance story, but also has actually really interesting world building and world like politics going on in the background, which kind of really feeds into the romance and why these two are married up to begin with, then this is definitely the book for you. This is one of my favorite reads of the year and I love it. Obviously it's werewolves and vampires, so it really is going to have that kind of Halloween, Summerween, kind of darker, maybe horror, mythical creatures kind of vibe that fits this category, but it doesn't read scary. It could very much still be a summer read because it feels very light and giggly and squealing, kicking your feet at the romance in this, and you could definitely read this at any point of the year. And if you want like a good Summerween book, then I would highly recommend this one. The next recommendation that I have for you is another new favourite, and that is Belladonna by Adeline Grace. Again, like this is just not scary, but it does have like a murder mystery vibe to it. We follow our main character Signa Farrow, and death follows her no matter where she goes. It reminds me a little bit of A Series of Unfortunate Events in that pretty much every family member Signa Farrow lives with ends up dying, and she has moved around from extended family member to extended family member, trying to find somewhere where she can stay until she comes of age. And we follow Signa as she goes to Thorn Grove, the kind of last place she could possibly end up, and there is a murder mystery afoot here. We follow Signa as she tries to get to the bottom of this and ends up working with Death himself in order to save this found family that she finds herself having and get to the bottom of the murder that's gone on here and save this house and these people. I adored this story and I cannot wait to read the next ones in this series. It has like a cozy murder mystery vibe to it, but you also have this element of the personification of death and dealing with death and grief and those kinds of themes, and it would very much fit into like a Summerween cozy, but it's about death kind of vibe of story. And if you haven't read this yet, then you are definitely missing out and you should 100% check this out. And then my final Summerween recommendation, because as I said, I'm not really like a spooky, scary horror kind of reader, and it was already a bit of a stretch for me to try to find books that I felt like I could recommend for Summerween. But this final recommendation is one of my favorites, and I would recommend this story just always anyway, but it would definitely fit for a cozy Summerween read, and that is Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. I haven't read much of Olivia Blake, but everything I do read I seem to really enjoy, and this is my favourite of the books that I have read from her. So this is another kind of murder mystery style book. I'm not a huge murder mystery kind of gal, but when it's murder mystery with like mythical creatures and fantasy elements and Olivia Blake writes it just hits. So we follow our main character Viola, and she is a vampire, but she is a vampire estate agent, and unfortunately she cannot sell the house that she's trying to sell because it is being haunted by the previous tenant, and she needs to team up with a team of other mythical creatures, one of them being a psychic, in order to help solve the murder of her previous tenant so that he can move on and she can finally sell this damn house. There is such an adorable like cast of different mythical creatures with really fun personalities in this book, and we follow them as they are all kind of dragged along on this little murder mystery, and it's never as simple as they assume it's going to be. It's such a nice story, but it has all of these like mythical creatures to it. Again, it has like themes of death, resurrection, ghosts, poltergeists, grim reapers, so many like mythical creatures for you to enjoy. This one really reminds me of the TV show Supernatural almost, but obviously they're not trying to kill the supernatural creatures because they are them. But this is such a fun story, and if you want some like Halloween-y vibes in the summer but you don't want like actual horror or like pure Halloween, then this is definitely going to be an amazing summerween book for you. I do apologize if the lighting is a little different. I got pulled away from this, but now I am back. The final category of this video is the spicy summer recs. The reason that most of you are probably here, my favorite type of books to read, the books that I read the most other than rom-coms. I feel like I'm either reading spicy romance books, spicy romantasy books, or I'm reading rom-coms. Like that's my ranking, all of the spice and then the rom-coms. So I am very excited to give you these recommendations, and this is the longest category of all of them. So the first book that I am going to recommend you as a spicy summer romance is Wild Love by Elsie Silver. Essentially any Elsie Silver book would work, but I feel like this one is like particularly summery, smutty vibes to me. This one felt more spicy and sexier than some of the others. I think a lot of people would disagree with me. Nothing beats Heartless for me. Like Heartless is my favorite Elsie Silver book, but I felt like this one was potentially hotter. But if you liked Heartless, then you would 100% like this one, because Heartless follows our main character Willow Grant, and then the main character in this book is Ford Grant, Willow's older brother. So if you like that one, you'll probably like this one. This is also a single dad small town romance, but this one is also brother's best friend, and we follow Ford as he adjusts to life as a single dad, deals with the fact that Rosie, his best friend's little sister, has come back into his life and he's never really been able to resist her, and he helps her out by giving her a job, which leads to a lot of forced proximity, small town office setting spiciness. This very much feels like it takes place over the summer. It feels very small town, like desert kind of vibes. Like it's not at all, but that's just kind of the vibe that it gives me in my head. This is definitely gonna give you like a steamy, spicy summer vibe. And then the next recommendation that I have for you is one of my all-time favorite romances, and if I can ever convince you to read a book like across my whole channel, I would pick this one. Like this is the one that you should read, and that is Caught Up by Liz Tomford. I have not read Play Along yet, but it is downloaded on my Kindle and it is waiting for me, so potentially also Play Along by Liz Tomford, but I haven't read that in order to recommend it. But this is definitely summery vibes. This is also like very spicy. This is not a rom-com. It doesn't feel like a rom-com at all. It's actually quite a hard-hitting romance. Well, not even like the romance, but the character development in Liz Tomford's books, and particularly this one, had me sobbing my eyes out at the end of the book because I just loved it so much and it was so sweet, and I just bonded with these characters to such a level. But also this is spicy and fun and everything you want from a romance novel, to be honest with you. Like it is so sexy, but then it also really has that heart to it, and I feel like that just makes the best romance novel. So this is a single dad sports romance, and we follow our main character Kai, and he is a like professional baseball player, and he is a single dad, and he is very, very protective of his young son, and he always fires his nannies, and it's reaching a point where it's starting to impact his career. So his coach, not wanting him to give up his career, convinces him to hire the coach's daughter as a nanny for the summer, and she is going to go on tour with these baseball players and be a nanny for Kai's son so that Kai can focus on his career, and she also gets a little break from her career and gets to spend some time with her dad, who is always on the road and she doesn't really get to see. We very much follow Miller, our female main character, as she is having this very fun summer. It takes place over the summer period, so that's why I recommended it more so than those Tom Ford's other books. Like, this one is very much set in the summer. But we follow Miller as she takes a step away from her career and is very reflective over her career and why she is as ambitious as she is, and we really follow her relationship with her father and how her relationship with her father is being influenced by her falling in love with Kai, and the fact that Kai is also a dad, and the fact that she's falling in love with Kai's son because she's his nanny, and how that all ties into her relationship with her own parents. Sobbed like a frickin' baby, but it's also spicy, it's sexy. Kai is one of the hottest male love interests I have ever read, and the fact that this takes place over a summer is just going to give you like the perfect vibes. It's also a sports romance, so it's going to be nice and easy to devour. It's about a summer sport, particularly if you're like US based. You might feel like this is even more summery because it's baseball. We don't really have baseball here in the UK for me to like associate reading about baseball with the summer, but it's definitely gonna give you that like summery vibe, and you have to start reading those Tom Ford books because I can't talk enough about how good they are. My next recommendation is also small town. I just feel like small town romances, particularly if they have like a cowboy vibe to them, just feel very summery. They often take place over the summer and they just always make me feel very summery, and if I can give you like an ounce of those vibes right now, then I really want to, because it is chucking it down outside. But my next recommendation is Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. Again, if you enjoy Elsie Silver, then you're probably gonna like this series. Like, it's just a very solid small town romance. It didn't blow me away. It's not like one of my favorite stories of all time, but it definitely fits the summer vibe. It has some really fun tropes that it does really well, and I will 100% be continuing with this series and would recommend this as like a really just light-hearted and fun, easy read, which you definitely need in the summertime. Like, that's to me like the perfect summer read. Is like romance based, contemporary based, and it's just like easy to read and really fun. So this is another brother's best friend small town romance, and we follow our main character Emmy, and she is like a championship barrel racer, but she is coming off of an injury and she is quite scared to ride a horse, so she has moved back to her hometown, spending the summer in her hometown, small hometown, kind of running away from her life and her fears. And this brings her back into the vicinity of Luke Brooks, her brother's best friend, and Luke is helping her overcome her fears and is just helping her like kind of find her feet again post injury. It is very, I don't know how much I can stress that this is just a really fun little like cowboy small town romance. There's also like a slight enemies to lovers here. Like, enemies is just so wrong, but I don't know how to phrase it. Like, because Luke is her brother's best friend, he's like completely like teases her, always gets in the way, has always like been overprotective of her, and obviously because it's a romance novel we can kind of assume it's because he's had a crush on her, but this leads Emmy to be quite like antagonistic to him. There's like just a lot of banter and back and forth and disagreements between these two as a result of them just like butting heads because of the relationship they've had and the tension between them, and it just makes for a really, really fun series. And I really enjoy the like horsey sport element to this. It's not super sports romancy, it doesn't really read like a sports romance, but I do enjoy that Emmy is like this championship like barrel racer, and we witness her like overcoming her fears and getting like metaphorically and literally getting back on the horse, and it just makes for a really fun read. And yeah, if you have kind of caught up on all of the Elsie Silver and you just want some more kind of small town recommendations, then this is one for you. Also, if you guys just want like in general small town recommendations, then please let me know, because I've really fallen down the rabbit hole of small town reads. And then my final just like smutty, easy to read, super spicy recommendation for the summer period is A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett Sinclair. Now, before you click off, hear me out on this recommendation, please. So my logic for this is quite literal as well as just based on fun. If you're allergic to fun, then fine, click away. But essentially I chose this because this is a Hades and Persephone retelling, and like Persephone, very spring summer vibes, obviously. So I kind of had to throw this one in here, and also it's just so smutty and easy to read. Like, is it amazing storytelling? No. Is it like just objectively an amazing book? Probably not. But is it really fun and something that you are just gonna binge read the whole series of and get lost in and just have this like really like fiery male and like these summer vibes? Yes. Like this is that book, and I think it just works well for summer, other than the fact that it's quite literal thinking from me and that it's a Persephone retelling. Other than being a Hades and Persephone retelling, this kind of is it's slightly urban fantasy, or like has fantasy elements in the sense that it takes place in like a modern contemporary setting, but the gods of Olympus are kind of like modern day celebrities, and they just exist amongst humans and amongst the real world. So Persephone, even though her mother is constantly telling her to not make a deal with Hades or get involved with Hades, she ends up going to the club that Hades owns and makes a deal with him anyway, which brings these two into each other's orbit and is how they keep being like drawn to each other. It is just super fun and kind of trashy, but it does have summery vibes, and I think you would probably really enjoy it because I really want to reread this, and just kind of, I want the fun of it, I want the silliness of it, and I think this book just doesn't take itself too seriously. And I would probably recommend most Scarlett Sinclair books in the sense of like, if you just want something a little bit silly, a little bit cheesy, but a lot fun, you're not gonna like read into it too much or care too much about plot holes, and if it's excellently written, like Scarlett Sinclair books are just, they're just good fun. And so that is why I'm ending this video with this recommendation. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope that you enjoyed, and I hope you have taken a recommendation from this video and you're going to enjoy it and it's going to give you the summery vibes. Maybe I've like convinced you to reread some series if you've already read a lot of the books in here. I know I've convinced myself to do some rereads of some of the books in this video, so I would love to hear your thoughts and if you've been influenced down below. Also, if you guys have any like summer vibes to add to this ultimate recommendations read, then do please leave those in the comment section for me to check out, because I need the summer vibes, but also for anybody else to see as well. And then this ultimate recommendations video just becomes even more ultimate because the comments can like feed into this as well. If you guys liked this video and you'd like to see more from me, then do please feel free to hit that big red subscribe button down below and stay tuned for future content. I upload every single Wednesday and every single Sunday, so there's no shortage of bookish content here for you to enjoy. Also, do please feel free to check me out on Bookstagram at apaigeinchapter. I post a lot over there, so you'll get some more book recommendations, you'll see what I'm reading, you'll see some pretty photos of books. I hope you guys are having a fantastic week, you're enjoying everything you are reading, and there are no reading slumps in your future, and I will see you for my next video. Bye guys.